like to welcome everybody to our webinar with the topic Enabling Hyper-Automation, How Decision-Driven Automation Unlocks the Value. This webinar is organized by us, by NEOOPS, together with our partner, XpertRule. Before we jump to the agenda, I would like to introduce myself, but majority of you probably know me. So my name is Zdeněk Kabátek, and I will be moderating today's webinar. So first, for those who are not familiar with GoToWebinar Platform, I would talk a little bit about house rules and how to navigate in the platform. You are muted on connecting to this webinar, but it doesn't stop you from raising the questions, because in your toolbar in the bottom part you have the questions section, and you can type your question throughout the webinar and we will try to answer all of them. If we don't have time, we will compile all the questions in a document and we provide the answers, and we will circulate the document to every participant. In here, in this section called handouts, you can download today's presentation, and in here you see the toolbar where you can minimize or show the toolbar. So that's just very short introduction of the platform for those who are not familiar with the GoToWebinar platform. And today's agenda for our topic is, in the first part, I will do very short introduction of today's speakers. I will talk very shortly about key automation challenges which we have identified throughout the years of our RPA practice. And then there will be our partner XpertRule talking about decision-driven automation and demonstrating of their solution called XpertRule on viable AI platform. Hopefully there will be also time for Q&A session, and at 11 o'clock we should wrap up this webinar. As I mentioned previously, this is recorded, so the video will be available after the webinar. All right, so let's look who are today's speakers. I already introduced myself. I'm Head of Professional Services in NEOOPS, and I will be talking about key challenges. And then the majority of the webinar, it will be presented by our partner XpertRule, and it will be Alex Bentley, who is Chief Revenue Officer, and Sam Stone, who will be doing a demo of the product and who is the Senior Solutions Architect from XpertRule. So let's go to the first part of our agenda, and that is key automation challenges. It's more like a looking back, because we have started with RPA several years, almost 8 years ago, and we have helped many of you to start with RPA to be successful, to realize the benefits. However, what we have seen recently, that RPA itself actually in many clients struggles to go beyond the tactical business process automation and transform into end-to-end process value-driven automation. There are just challenges which RPA itself cannot address. And that's why we have started with some initiatives which would include artificial intelligence to move from pure RPA into intelligent automation. Again, this is completely different approach, because usually artificial intelligence projects are taking more time, taking more investment, and very often it doesn't scale beyond proof of value projects. And what is everybody familiar with is that at the beginning, when you started with RPA, it was very easy to find the processes where it was easy to automate, easy to realize the benefits, and everything was looking bright and nice. And as the time goes, you realize that this low-hanging fruit, which you actually harvested in the past years, is gone, and you need to look at other challenges or opportunities within your organization, and those opportunities are more complex, and you cannot solve it with RPA itself only. However, those opportunities are bringing greater value from if you succeed with automation. And that's we brought our partner XpertRule today to present a solution which could help you to overcome those challenges and actually discover new opportunities where you could automate what was impossible before. So I would like to invite on the stage Alex Bentley, who would give an introduction to decision-driven automation. So
thanks,
Alex.
Zdenek. Thanks, Zdenek, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, as Zdenek says, I'm Chief Revenue Officer at XpertRule. I've actually got a background in intelligent automation as well. I was at Blue Prism before joining XpertRule when I was part of the executive team there, and they're actually from since 2013. So let me pick up from where Zdenek left off. If we can just move to the next slide, Zdenek. So the issues that Zdenek was talking about really play out in this picture. And if you look at the top picture, what we see is what's happening at the moment. When you go and you look across your business and to try and find the opportunities for automation, you're actually looking for the low-hanging fruit, those things that are suitable for automation. So you pick off the tasks that are suitable, and we call that task-centric automation or bottom-up automation. And you see the little green boxes are where we have success, right? It's spread out across the end-to-end process. But the issue is that often you find that there are big chunks of the process that still remain with people. I'm just going to turn my my camera off just in case the network's not good. Okay, so what you find is actually there are still a lot of areas that you're not able to automate, and these are still done by people. So you end up with these islands of automations, these fragmented processes, and sometimes, quite often, you're not able to get the true, extract a significant amount of ROI or benefit from automation because it's really fragmented. So we're proposing an alternative approach, and this is the bottom picture. What we're proposing is outcome-driven automation, and really this is what Gartner are talking about when they refer to hyper-automation. It's looking at the process top-down and from end to end, start to finish. So what we're able to do with this outcome-driven automation approach is to leverage and use all of the automation that's already been done through RPA and other technologies and link it all together, and now tackle the more complex work, the areas that typically were too difficult but maybe still required people. And by doing that, we can link it all together and automate the end-to-end flow. So that sounds great, right? But so how do we do that? Let me explain to you the approach. So if we can just go to the next slide. So in order to explain that, if we can just take a step back and look at what it is that humans are doing in their day-to-day work activities. And actually, you can split human work activity into three categories. The first one is workflow. So people are executing, prioritizing, organizing tasks and work, right? The second one is that they are making decisions. So they're using experience, reasoning, their own knowledge and judgments to make decisions. And the third thing that people are doing is they're interacting with other people, whether it's customers or other employees or partners. But the most important thing here is when we look at what those people are doing, all people are doing, they're not doing each of those activities in isolation. They're actually doing them all blended, fully integrated together. So the decisions come in parallel with the conversation, and then at the back of that, they're also processing and executing work as they're making those decisions, as they're talking to people. It's all blended together. So if we go to the next slide, if we contrast that with the way that the technology solutions have been developed, what we actually see is that technology solutions have been developed to address each one of those three areas in isolation. So the technology has been developed in silos. And this is really, when we look at that, that's why we see these three problems that Zdeněk talked about. It's very difficult to put those three technology solutions together in a way that replicates what humans are doing. So as a result, it's very expensive to put things together. You end up with tactical automation. It's very brittle, so it's very difficult to change and to manage. And at an overall level, it's just inefficient. It's very difficult to actually achieve achieve that end-to-end automation that we're all aiming for with hyper automation, as it were. So if we can just go to the next slide. So why are we different? Well, what we're doing is we are able, because our platform has been built with those three components fully integrated together. So we've got workflow, we've got decisioning, and we've got conversational AI, all blended together. And the three components all work together as one platform, which means we can replicate what humans are doing. Now, that is all wrapped in a low-code platform. So business users are able to very quickly capture their knowledge and then manage it, change it across conversations, across decisions, and across workflow, all in one very simple top-down authoring platform. And that's supported by explainable AI. So not only can we capture knowledge with no code from business users that's in their heads, all of that knowledge and expertise, we can also overlay knowledge that is learned from data. And we can blend the two things together as well. And every single decision and all the paths through the end-to-end flow are fully auditable and explainable. So it's completely transparent. So if you're working in a regulated industry where you absolutely have to know, which path each transaction went through on each version of the product, you can trace and track that. So overall, what we're able to do is we're able to automate end-to-end processes, and we're able to make better decisions across the entire enterprise. Because actually, the element that RPA isn't really able to do, it's able to do the simple task fulfillment, but it's where you start to make complex decisions and bringing that together with the task fulfillment. That's where we really bring things to life. So if we can just go to the next slide. Okay, so what does it look like in practice? And Sam will talk to this a little bit as he walks through the demo. If we look at the top right-hand side here, the customer can interact directly with us through a conversational interface, so through our chat front end. But quite often, most businesses will already have invested in a chat capability. So the customer can also interact through your own chat channel, but we'll power that chat channel. So we'll be driving all of the knowledge and all of the complexity behind that, and we'll instruct the chat channel. Or the customer can also interact with an agent on the phone, and we'll sit on that agent's desktop and we'll power the conversation. So it enables agents that weren't previously skilled to handle the more complex work to suddenly handle everything, multi-skilled across any product that you've trained the engine to perform. And you're also able to then provide a consistent customer experience across any channel, whether it's chat or voice. Okay, so how does that work? So that's supported by a digital decisioning capability and process workflow that we talked about. So this is the really powerful digital decisioning capability. It's all blended together. And behind that, we've got the low-code platform. So what we refer to as integration platform as a service. So we've got connectors that are pre-built, all low-code, that you can draw down on. And if you don't have a connector, then it's very easy to build those through the build tools. Again, Sam will show that to you. But we can connect to any ERP platform. We can power your RPA platform, so Blue Prism. We can call that, and we can call cognitive services where they're required to support the process as well. And on the left-hand side, as I mentioned, it's all captured within a low-code authoring platform. So we can take the outputs of, say, process mining. We can we can import those directly, and that will give us an end-to-end map of the process, and we can then use our decision engineering techniques. So these are a multitude of problem-solving techniques that can solve any particular problem to tackle the particular automation challenge that you have, all in low code. And as I mentioned before, it's all all the AI that we use is explainable. So we can learn from data, we can import data and derive decision flows from that. We've got the ability to then trace those back. And the impact is that we're actually able to link front, middle, and back office into one single entity. So really driving efficiency across the end-to-end process lifecycle. So let me move on to the next slide. And I think, let's see. Okay, right. So I'm going to hand over to Sam in a minute. But before we do that, we're just going to do a quick poll. So I think the question should come up on your screen just now.
Yeah, so guys, you have heard something about decision and how it affects or how it can be configured. Now we are presenting on your screen the question so that you can actually think about your processes which you might have put aside for different reasons, because what Alex presented is a different approach to automation. As he said, instead of going bottom up, you may focus on outcome-driven automation. So you rather look at what is the challenge for the process automation and why there are obstacles and what kind of obstacles, and you try to solve that challenge instead of putting that process aside because it would be too complicated to automate. So I can see that the votes are being casted. So I give you 10 seconds more before I close the poll. And you can choose multiple answers. All the answers are valid. We are just here to present for you what and how you do your decisions. Right. So 5 seconds to go. Please cast your votes. And we are closing the poll. And we can share the results. So you can see that 57% voted that you are capturing those decisions or information in various documents, which is quite typical. 50% storing as some kind of data structure in Excel database, ERP, CRM system, and 38% implemented software applications. Shockingly and surprisingly, 71% is stored in individual knowledge employees head, which is really, as everybody feels, it's really bad approach. So thank you for polling, and now we can go to the demo. So let me welcome Sam Stone, who will be doing the demonstration. So I need to make him a presenter.
Are we going to do this slide first, Nick?
Okay, we do the slides first. Okay. All right. Sorry. So you can go ahead, Sam.
We've still got the poll.
Okay, we are still sharing the poll. Okay.
Perfect. There's the slide. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, that's really interesting results from that poll. Seeing 71% have it in the knowledge experts head, that really lends itself well to sort of showing how we can really help with that situation and improving that situation with viable AI. So what we have on screen now is a little overview of the demo that I'm going to show you through. It's a reasonably complex one, so it's worth explaining it first before I get stuck in. So what we're dealing with is an insurance claim. Worth pointing out that this is mostly built around sort of capability showing, so it doesn't really reflect a real use case for insurance claims. It's more to show in a vague way how an insurance claim would work in our platform to show various different tools that we have available. So it all starts on the left-hand side here with the orange claimant. They put all their information into a claim form, which is built in our tool as well, which then gets submitted into a queue. Now, this claim form could easily be any other forms technology, any proprietary web tool that an insurer may have, anything along those lines. We can ingest that information. It could even be a scanned form that then gets sent via OCR, and then the results of the OCR come over to Viable. But anyway, once it gets there, we start off with a few checks and a few machine learning models to see if this claim is looking likely to be fraudulent or not. So the beginning is some policy rules. This is based around if-then rules to see if this particular claim has information that looks worthy of flagging up to further investigation. And that includes going to cognitive services, which in this case is Google Vision, to look at any images submitted with the claim to confirm if there's an accident in the image and to check whether that image is elsewhere on the internet, so possibly a stock photo, which would suggest a fraudulent claim. Once those policy rules have been checked, if it's been approved, then it can go on and move on to finalization. If there's anything that's looking a bit suspicious in those policy rules, then we go on to do a risk assessment using two different machine learning models. The first one is an explainable machine learning model, which is looking at how likely this claimant is to submit a fraudulent claim. And following that, we do an unstructured machine learning model, which looks at the claim as a whole, including the images and everything, to see how this claim stacks up against previous claims that have been made and which ones of those were okay and which ones of those were fraudulent claims. So it looks at all the historical information, and that one's actually continuously learning. So later on in the process, when we get a result, we can train that to keep learning every time that a case gets processed. So off the back of the risk assessment, if everything's looking okay, once again, it can go through to finalization. At this point, it can also be automatically rejected and spat out to say, no, we're not paying out on this. But the path we're going to try guide things down today for the demo is to be suspicious enough to be flagged, but not too suspicious to be rejected. And it then needs to reach out to the claimant to get more information. It does this by generating a unique conversation URL and emailing that over to the claimant, who then engages with our conversational decisioning engine to provide more information based on a conversational tree that's built out to decide what questions to ask next based on their previous answers. So this conversational decisioning goes through and gets to a point where they have where we've got, again, a suspicious or a clear sort of response. And if it's continuing to look suspicious, at that point, it passes it on to the fraud assessor. And the fraud assessor gets their hands on it. This is done in a very similar way to the claimant, the extra questions being asked through conversational decisioning. We generate a unique link, we email that over to the fraud assessor, and they have a look at this sort of dashboard, which I'll show you shortly, and they can see all the information that's been presented by the claimant and also the information that's come from all of the machine learning models. They can take all that in and make pass their judgment on whether or not this claim is fraudulent, which, you know, it's nice to have a human step before you go accuse somebody of fraud. You don't want the computers to be able to do all of that on their own. And off the back of their result, that's where we do the unstructured continual learning training and then the finalization of decision. So that's where we go and either pay out the claim or alert the authorities, do whatever needs to be done if someone submitted a fraudulent claim. So that's sort of the overview of the process that I'm going to walk you through now. I'll be stepping through between our runtime and our design time. So Zdenek, if you could pass me the screen share, I can start walking through it. Very good. Can you see that now, Zdenek?
Yes, I can see it, and I believe
Perfect.
the rest, the audience as well.
All right, so what we're looking at here is the claim form, the initial claim form. This is where we will kick everything off from. This is built using our dialogue deployment style. We've got two options, dialogue and conversational. This one's sort of more of a forms style, but it's got all of our intelligent automation behind it. What we've got here is pre-populated information for a guy called John Wainwright, and the idea being this would be pre-populated by the web portal you've logged into or calling off to a CRM to grab the information and present that to the user, whatever it may be. So you just need to put in some basic information. So for me, I'll put my email address in here to play the role of John Wainwright, the claimant, and then proceed to put in some accident details. Now remember, I need to make this look fraudulent so that it gets flagged up to continue down the path. So let's say that we had an accident just before the pandemic began, but we're only going to report it today. We had it at a road junction. There were 5 vehicles involved, and I need to describe it. So I was hit from behind while waiting at the lights. It was a huge pile-up. I was stationary. Yes, I'd like to make a personal injury claim, and yes, I've got a photo of the accident. So that's the accident details. Click through. Now we're being asked about the personal injury claims. So there were 9 people in my car. That sounds nice and fraudulent. And then we've got the images to upload. So I'll go pick some images. I'll just go with that one there. Looks like a good nose to tail. So that's uploaded. Then I click next. And for the purposes of the demo, I'm just going to put my email address in again so that I can also play the role of the fraud assessor today. And it looks like I've spelled that correctly. Cool. So now I hit submit. And this is going off and doing gathering all the data it needs, and then also doing all the decisioning around the machine learning models, the cognitive services, and just like that, it's got to the point where it knows what to do next, which if I bring my emails up, that's just come through now saying, please put in more information. So I've successfully been fraudulent enough for it to want more information out of me. So it's generated this unique link and it's sent that over to me via email so I can click it and go fill in the rest of the information. Now, before I go do that, I'm just going to step you through what's happened in the background in a bit more detail. So over here, we're in our development environment. This is Viable AI, the Viable AI editor. And on the left-hand side here, you can see a decision map. This shows a really high-level view the whole way through our knowledge base. So it's what we refer to these sort of applications as. They're knowledge base. They store all the knowledge from the experts around the business. And then on the right-hand side here, we've got a more detailed view of the particular flow that we're looking at, which is main decision flow here. So once the submission has been made by that form, all of that data gets sent over via an API into here, and we begin the decisioning process. So as I mentioned, this is sort of a bit of a simulation of how an insurance claim would work. So it's not perfect, but as I say, it's entirely possible to tweak all this. This isn't like a set flow for insurance or anything. It's all drag and drop. You put everything where you need it. You make the flow that works for your particular business. So fully flexible, fully customizable, all no low code stuff. But anyway, for the demo, we've got the first thing that happens is image processing. So in here, we're simply looping through each of the images and calling Google Vision. We grab all the information from Google Vision, put it all into the same place, and then we move on to continue with the rest of the steps. So that's doing 2 types of things in Google Vision. It's detecting web entities looking for any sign of this on the website, on any websites, which is like Google reverse image search, and then it's detecting labels, which is trying to find what this image has in it. Once it's got that, we can then step into the fraud monitoring rules. Now in here, we go and gather a bunch more information that's relevant to the rules, which in this case we're sending it off to Blue Prism, which is firing it off to Blue Prism. The Blue Prism process is quite simple. It's just reading the information out of a spreadsheet and firing it back, but it could be as complex as Blue Prism can make things. And then we use that information in the policy rules, and we even use a bunch of it further down the line as well. So inside the policy rules, we have a series of if-then rules. Now, this is designed to be very simple to use for business users. The whole platform is, but this one's particularly nice and straightforward. They can come in and maintain the policy rules here. For example, parked vehicles greater than 2. Now let's just go change that to 5. I can update that, hit save, hit deploy, and it's all live and ready to be used in the next run. So what we're doing is basically selecting a multi-select output, saying any of these rules being flagged means we have a problem. So there's a series of different rules that we can add more, we can remove them. I'll not save for the purposes of this demo. And then basically we're splitting. We're saying if there's anything in there, it's a fail, but if it's empty, we pass. So trying to find if any of those rules are flagged. A pass would go straight down to notifying the person that they've had their claims successful, which is our finalization step. We're just triggering the email to say that it's either passed or failed. But when we've failed the fraud monitoring rules, like I have today, we then go down to our fraud risk assessments. This is the machine learning models that we talked about. So inside here, we're starting to look at a few different knowledge representations. So far I've showed you a tree, I've showed you now a table here, and also I showed you the decision rules just a moment ago. Now, it's worth pointing out we have a whole range of different knowledge tools to represent knowledge. So all these purple ones in this build tools section down here are all different ways of representing knowledge. On top of that, we have a range of advanced and AI tools available. I'll step through one of the AI tools in a second. We've also got connections to some of the big names. So we've got Google Cloud, as mentioned, we're using Google Vision. We've got Salesforce and Dynamics from CRMs, as well as a generic REST web service. We can connect to anything via a REST web service. Microsoft Cognitive is in there as well. A recent addition is process mining. So we can actually ingest information from Abby Salonis, and we've got a generic one as well, which should cover the majority of other BPMN exports. Basically what that does is build the skeleton of the decision tree based on the outputs of the process mining. And then we've also got an RPA integrations to the three of the 4 main players as well. So it would take forever to go through all those, so I'll stick with what we've got built into the demo so far. So coming back to our decision table here, we can see we've got a number of rows specified, which has actually also induced this tree so that you can see it in both ways. Now, the way the table works is you set the inputs you want, in this case, we've got claimant fraud risk, claim fraud risk, and the estimated claim value. The table auto-populates all the rows with all the possible values of those inputs, and then the expert comes through and specifies the outputs. So they can come and say, this is a reject, that's a pass, come and update it. And you can see the tree keeps updating live on the right-hand side as well. But the more interesting thing to go into is what each of these inputs actually is and how it's being calculated. So the claimant fraud risk, our first input here, this is our decision mining offering. So this is one of our AI tools where we supply a table of data and then click a button, this button here. It takes a couple of minutes, so I won't do it right now, and it spits out this decision tree for us. So it goes through, it goes all the way through that data set, finds all of the statistically significant outcomes that it can based on different splits and various thresholds you can adjust if you want to. And we can see at the right-hand side here, we've got all these different varying shades of reddy pink to see the different likelihoods of this claimant submitting a fraudulent claim. So in the initial data set of 15,000 rows, there were 6% of those that were fraudulent claims. And based on these different splits, we can see what make the car is, the type of policy, who was at fault in the accident, the age of the policyholder, the vehicle price, all these sorts of things. Different points that we can split on to get to changing from 6% likelihood of fraud to 23% at the most extreme, and down to 0% at the best case. So it's creating quite a different picture of what this claimant actually is likely to be doing based on that historic data. So it's a really powerful way to build the knowledge, to build it from historical data rather than relying on the knowledge experts themselves. But that doesn't stop the expert from coming in and saying, hold on, no, the vehicle price shouldn't be relevant, let's remove that. Or, I mean, that's not a great example, vehicle price is normally quite relevant, but you could come in and you can maintain this, you can remove things that look irrelevant, and you can rerun the machine learning to calculate without that. But also it's very explainable. This isn't black box machine learning, this is fully explainable on the tree here, so we can easily show in an audit environment, regulatory environment, how a decision gets to this point. On the flip side of that, our next machine learning model to show through, which once this one's calculated, we just take that percentage and turn it into a low, medium, or high to make the decision table a bit more manageable. But then we have the claim fraud risk. So the claim fraud risk, it uses our Bayesian classifier to have its unstructured machine learning. Now this is the black box version, where each time we send it over some information, we say, all this data relates to clear, or all this data relates to suspicious, and it continuously learns from that information. And so then when we call it as a classifier, we can say, hey, here's all this information from this claim. What does it look like? Does it look clear or does it look suspicious? And that comes back saying either clear or suspicious. Now, we've actually got two that run, one for the images and one for the rest of the claim, basically. So we just got a little bit of logic in here to make sure both of them get called, but only we make sure that if one of them's suspicious, we know that it's suspicious. So that's the unstructured machine learning. We've also got on here an estimated claim value. Now this is just built using a little tree. This one would be a great candidate to use the machine learning on to learn from data again. But for the purposes of this, we just wanted to show the different options available. So this one would just be built using a knowledge expert. So someone in the business who's familiar with the value of claims who can come through and say, oh yeah, we'll split on these pieces of information and we get to low, medium, or high. So that's all of the fraud risk assessments. Off the back of that, we either get to a pass, a refer, or a reject. And conveniently today, we've landed on refer so that we've got the claimant questionnaire sent over to us. And what happens inside this is it creates that unique link, emails it to me, and goes to sleep. So that's where we can pick it up in our actual filling in flow. So if we go back over to the email, I can click the link and it'll open up the conversational decisioning. So as I mentioned, this is our second sort of proprietary deployment style. Looks a little different. This one's more of a conversation flow. The previous one's more of a form style. But as Alex mentioned, we can connect to other conversation tools. We can connect to other forms tools, whatever it needs to be to present it to the end user in the way that works the best. So we'll step through. Ask me about medical treatments. Yeah, I got some medical treatments. And remember, I need this to look fraudulent. So I'm going to answer this in a strange way. Did I attend a hospital? I sure did. Suffering from any of the following: whiplash, concussion. Yeah, I had some broken bones as well. Cool. Did I have an X-ray taken? No, I didn't have any X-rays taken for my broken bones, and no, I didn't get any medication prescribed. Didn't spend any nights in hospital, and I self-certified my sick leave. Great, cool. Submit that, and it goes off and ends up back in our workflow, and we'll see in a second that should have been suspicious enough that now, putting my investigation team hat on, I've received an email saying, please go and investigate the information we have available here. Now, once again, just before I step into that, I'll show you what's happened in the background. So we have a separate knowledge base driving the chat. We also had a separate knowledge base behind the claim form, but that one's very simple because it's just the input. How it works is we're trying to ask questions which will result in either a referral or a pass. So refer needs to go to the agent or the fraud assessor to have a look at it. Pass, that's fine, we can pay out the claim. So inside the questionnaire, first we need to determine whether there's personal injuries to ask about. Now that takes the information from the very initial form where I said yes on personal injury claim, which then stays with the client, the case the whole way through the different knowledge bases. That information gets held and passed through. So didn't get asked that question, it already knew the answer. But then we got asked about medical treatments and then into a medical screening, which some of these will look a little familiar. Did we go to hospital? What were our symptoms? Had broken bones? Did we have an X-ray? We ended up down with a RAG status coming out. So I said no on prescribed medication, I think. So that must have come out as red, which we'll see soon what the result was. But it goes through and finds this information so that it can then present it later on, but also to use in the decisioning. So we had some claim credibility questions and all that. Now, it would have come out with a refer because of the way I answered those questions. There's no way you could possibly pass a claim based on that information, claiming broken bones with no X-rays. But that's then been passed back to our main flow, which resumed where we were before for a refer, and then goes down to do exactly the same thing for the investigation team. It builds some reports, then creates that custom link, emails it over to me, and goes to sleep waiting for the result. Now you'll see straight after the resume here, it's got the train Bayes. So that's going to train the Bayesian models as soon as I hit submit on this assessor form, and then proceed to finalization steps off the back of that. So we'll go back to the email for the investigation. I click that link, and it takes me to another sort of form style deployment. So this is again our dialogue style, and this dashboard can show all the information from the case so far. So at the top here, we can see all those rules that were flagged. So there was a high number of personal injury claimants. It was very delayed. It's been over 2 years since the supposed accident. Then we can see the results of the Bayesian classifier, which shows that I do this demo way too much. 100% of claims that look like this are rejected. Doesn't look anything like any approved claims because I never really put any approved claims through this demo. Medical screening came back with a red, and the claim credibility afterwards came back as an amber. So that's a result of the questionnaire. Then the explainable machine learning, the claimant risk indicator, we've come back saying that they're 10.28% likely to submit a fraudulent claim based on this information that we gathered from that call to Blue Prism to go get the CRM information, which was just a spreadsheet. Then we've got the details of the accident, which was just what was submitted in the initial form. And we have the image information. So we can see the image that was submitted. It's been flagged as a possible stock image because Google found this somewhere on the internet. Now, that could be okay. It could be that the claimant posted it on Twitter and said, look what happened to my car today, and that's how it's found it. But yeah, we can assess that as the fraud assessor and see how plausible that is. Various bits of information, it's collision, traffic. There's some information in here about the performance center because that's where the image has been found, things like that. So looks a bit suspicious. It's similar again to 100% of rejected claims and a few approved claims this time. That's the image Bayesian classifier. We've got more information from that's been gathered through the process down here as well, but that's less exciting. But as the fraud assessor, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, that accident has not given 9 people reason to claim personal injury. 9 people in one vehicle, neither of those vehicles is big enough to have 9 people in it. And all of these indicators are looking pretty bad. So I'm gonna pick who I am. I'm gonna be your Matt Emmeline today. Say that's suspicious, hit submit, and that goes and re-triggers that main flow, wakes it up, and trains Bayesian classifiers and goes on to finalize the decision, which in this case, if I go back to my emails, is emailing John Wainwright and saying, unfortunately, your claim has been rejected, which I think is probably a pretty polite way of saying we're accusing you of fraud. So that shows how we can really tie together an end-to-end process using Viable AI. It's showing a number of our decisioning tools. It's showing how we can pick up and put down the workflow, as well as our two main deployment methods, which is the dialogue sort of form style and the conversational chat style. We can also deploy as a silent engine, which is where your another application, for example, an RPA tool, could pass all the information over in one call, and you get a sub-second response with the decision coming out of the other end, which is another great way to take that knowledge out of your individuals' heads, put it somewhere that can be maintained very easily in a low-code manner, and to have that utilized by whatever tools need to use it around the business. So that concludes the demo. I'll hand back to Zdenek.
All right. So, okay. All right. So thank you, Sam, for very interesting demo. And now there is
yes, just you want me to talk through just the last couple of slides, and then I think we go to questions, don't we? So I'll make this quick because I know we do have some questions. So just really, we've given you an idea of what it can do, but in terms of the breadth, there are use cases across your entire organization. It's really helpful for the more complex tasks. And what I would say is definitely worth looking at those things that you've perhaps had in your automation backlog for a while and haven't been able to tackle. So things like claims processing, risk assessments, things like where you've got complaints or customer collections, or where you're doing complex selling or complex support, where you need to do product support that's on your core products. They're all really good use cases in the supply chain, legal, regulatory. I mean, we can share the slides afterwards so you can have a look. And then maybe I'll just go to one final slide before we finish with the questions. So I wanted to just share with you some key metrics. These are actually based on one of our customers, which was a global manufacturer. And when we implemented at that global manufacturer, actually what the impact was that over the years that we'd been operating with them, we basically ran their front-end sales capabilities. So they have a really complex product set where they're building and designing supermarkets, and the configuration of that supermarket layout for all the refrigeration units was difficult and required specialist knowledge. Using the product, they were able to empower the frontline salespeople to do that. And they were also able to put the same level of expertise in the hands of their partners. So they opened up all of the partner channel as well. So the result was that they reduced the time to make a decision dramatically. They also shortened the sales cycle and increased the time to revenue. And because all of the configurations that they were doing for their sales were more accurate, there was less rework. So it went straight through into SAP and the billing cycle and the bill of materials. And overall, when you look back at what this company had done, they'd grown revenue by, over the period that we'd implemented, obviously not just purely down to our software, they were doing a lot of things right, but they'd grown revenue by 300%, and they went from being in the middle of the pack to one of the global market leaders over that period. So a really powerful use case. So let me hand back to Zdeněk now, and I think we were going to go for some questions. Zdeněk.
Yep. Thank you, Alex. And before we go to to the questions,
oh yeah, sorry,
yeah, if you can, Alex, just describe this,
Yeah, great. Sorry, I've forgotten about this. So yeah, look, because we're now working with NEOOPS, we'd love to make a specific offer in conjunction with NEOOPS to offer some services and to offer our product. So there are three things that we have put into this package. So the first thing is that we will offer a complimentary 2-hour discovery workshop with one of our principal consultants alongside the NEOOPS team to identify opportunities. The second thing that we will do is we'll provide access to our learning academy. It's an online learning academy to give people the ability to learn the product. It's very straightforward to learn. That's kind of the point. It's easy and quick to pick up. And we can also then provide a sandbox environment as well, so that you can do some experimentation with the product in a safe environment. And finally, if anybody is then interested in taking on XpertRule and the Viable platform, then if for any customer that subscribes by the 31st of May, we will also offer a 10% discount on the annual license. But that's purely for NEOOPS customers only. And if you're interested in moving forward with any of this, please just speak to Zdeněk or one of the NEOOPS team, and they can guide you through.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. This is definitely a compelling offer. Guys, I believe that the XpertRule solution can really make a difference in your automation. And so don't be afraid, or don't wait to contact us, and we can arrange any of those points which you see on the screen. And now it comes the Q&A session. So there are several questions which were raised. One of them is that because XpertRule platform works with Celonis or EBI timeline, or you presented, Alex, that on the screen. So the question is how it is integrated, or how it can be integrated with Celonis or EBI, or is there any preference for you to integrate with one of those tools? And if you have any real case example where you use that integration.
Yeah, okay. So first thing is it's agnostic to any provider. The second thing is it's just a couple of quick clicks of the button to import it into the platform. And the third thing is we've built that integration, and we've used both Celonis and Abby Timeline to test that, but it has been built and it's been implemented for probably only the last few weeks. So we haven't tested it. We haven't got any customers who've used it yet. It's absolutely brand new. If this is something that you are looking at, then we'd love to explore that with you. One thing we can do, we won't have time on this session, is we can do a demonstration of how that works. So we can show you, we can show you the import and the export from Abby Timeline. I don't know if we've got a slide in the deck actually that we maybe could draw up. I think we maybe had one in the appendix.
Yeah, but we are running out of time.
Let's do it another time. Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, so very interesting. Maybe Sam, if can answer, how long did it take to build this demo? Because to me, it looks pretty massive, So how long does it take to build such, in my opinion, complicated, demo? I'm not sure.
Sam, I think you're on mute there.
Yeah, probably you are on mute.
Sorry, I've got 2 mute buttons. Yeah, that one's one of our more complex demos that we've got floating around. I rebuilt that right at the start of this year. It took me about 2 weeks to start and build. I built it in a separate environment to where the existing one had been. So I had a bit of stuff to work off, but I was refactoring it quite a lot and changing it quite a lot through that process. But yeah, that took 2 weeks to pull together. So a pretty quick turnaround for something that complex.
Well, that's really impressive, because 2 weeks, and this shows a lot of features of XpertRule solution. Another question, which is definitely interesting for majority of our audience, is how easy it is to use a viable solution with Blue Prism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can take that as well. So the connector that we built to Blue Prism makes use of cloud queues as sort of an intermediary. So we can use Microsoft Azure queues or Amazon SQS to basically put something onto those queues, and then Blue Prism can sit there polling it in the background. That's mainly to get around version 6 limitations, but going with version 7, you could hit the Blue Prism API directly instead, and I'll get that working once I've got access to a version 7 demo version to play with. But yeah, it's very easy. You just send through a wizard in our tool. You build what information you want to send over, and then at the Blue Prism end, it's just all available in part of the payload for the queue item. And going the other way around, we've got web API services and a couple of objects built in Blue Prism that we can hand out to call the other way, to use the sort of the silent decisioning from the viable end, or to use the human in the loop functionality of sending out those unique links to people as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Alex, you talked about reducing the total cost of ownership. How do you achieve that in practice, actually?
Yeah, thanks, Zdenek. Yeah, there's 2 things here, really. The first thing is the speed of development. And I think, as Sam mentioned, with how long it took to build the demo, it's very, very fast to develop. It's an order of magnitude faster than developing in something like Blue Prism or any of the RPA products. But the other area is really the ease of maintenance, the ease and speed of maintenance. And that's really down to 5 things. So firstly, there's an overall knowledge map that you have. So you've got visibility of the end-to-end process. Very easy to read and to understand. The second thing is we've got very comprehensive user permissions. So we can govern, so the platform can be governed centrally by the automation COE, but you can provide permissions for individual business owners across the business, federated out, to own just their piece of the knowledge that they're an expert in, and they can manage that themselves independently without impacting the integrity of the application. The third thing is that it's all low code, no code, so it's very easy and quick to make changes, and also to impact assess those changes on different versions of the product. And then, as you will have seen, there's a range of different problem-solving techniques. So because we've got the integration of workflow, decisioning, and conversation in one, you can solve most automation problems within one single platform. It makes it very easy to actually automate and then to maintain and update all of those complex automations. And the fifth thing then is the flexibility. So where you can't manage something within the product, we've got connectors that enable you to do that. So it's very easy to then hook into intelligent document processing, into Blue Prism or RPA, or into any cognitive services as you've seen. So you can manage all of those integration points from within one single platform across that entire, process view that you have, which gives people the ability to really manage and maintain it very easily.
All right, another question from the audience is related to possibility to connect your tool to external models, like for example, created in Azure Databricks. I don't know whether it's a question for Sam or for Alex.
Yeah, that one is for Sam or for Haider, I think. Sam, do you want to?
That one definitely doable. Or basically anything offered by the big name cloud providers is very easy to connect to. We could either build a connector or work with you to build. We could build a connector to go generically into the product. We could work with you to build a connector just for you to use, or indeed you could just consume it with the REST API connector. But yeah, any models from external parties that are accessible via an API, we can consume those in place of using the models built into the platform.
Excellent. So we just consumed all the time. So if any question unanswered, guys, no worries. We will compile them in the document and send it to the audience with all the answers. So thank you everybody for attending today's webinar. I hope that it brings something you can think about, and hopefully we will get some clients who would like to explore more in this area to move on in their automation effort.